Hello, I am Mantastic and Fantastic, and today I'm going to be talking about the changes to my legendary tier list in Creature Quest. So, not too many major changes have taken place since my last video and posting, mostly because people are starting to get in a rhythm or groove, and mostly right now my tier list is mostly just adjusting for the current meta shift right now. Furthermore, a lot of players are now starting to catch up in terms of Kingdom Shrine levels, which kind of evens the playing field. For the first couple of weeks of Kingdoms, the very gung-ho or passionate individuals were able to play lots and have significantly higher shrines than their opponents, so they tended to dominate PvP, and it kind of threw things for a little bit of a loop. But now that we're starting to enter like the 20-25 range of shrines, it gets very expensive, very costly to upgrade, and the benefits, while useful, are becoming less and less powerful. Like, for instance, I went from, say, 900 power to 1000 power. Sure, it's still 100 power gained, but in the grand scheme of things, the percentage increase is still small, but it's costing me a fortune to actually upgrade that shrine. So now the big determinant factor for PvP will be your enchants and whether or not you have these delicious gold enchants or you're min-maxing your silver. And I'll talk a little bit more about them as we move along. With all that being said, Astral Watcher tends to be a very dominating force in the PvP world because he can resurrect creatures, he's reasonably tanky, and also, because of his dominance, a lot of players are starting to switch to black heavy floor ones, which is where most of the fights are determined. However, white is, amusingly enough, the strongest color in the game, so a lot of players tend to have teams very white heavy to deflect damage away from Astral, and if someone else dies, you can just resurrect them, so it doesn't end up being that big of a deal. So, the current PvP meta has shifted towards a nuke-oriented first floor, basically, that ideally tries to remove key creatures right away. Now, this nuke style strategy is obviously interesting because you can stack colors, weave buffs, and try and nuke down a particular opposing enemy, which is why something like, say, Astral Watcher gets countered by these black skeletons, and a lot of players are flooding their floor ones of them to try and counter him getting through because they can crit and possibly one-shot them. Now, floor 2 and 3 have less relevance at this point in time. It's more so if you were damaged or low mana or have nothing ready, floor 2 might kill you, floor 3 might kill you, so it's not as important at this point in time. Now, in terms of enchants are a relatively new feature still, and they become very expensive, obviously, at the gold level. But to a certain extent, if you can min-max silver, that tends to be quite efficient for the most part. And players who have dungeons that have min-maxed their silver enchants tend to be quite strong and formidable. Obviously, if you get lucky and get a gold power enchant on your key creature, that's going to be very terrifying to face moving forward. If you want to read about my enchanting guide, please take a look at my article here. Now, Kingdom Shrines, everyone's kind of got more balanced for the most part, but these tier lists are going to assume everyone has equal Kingdom Shrines and min-max their gold enchants. Again, not feasible, but tier lists are meant to not be feasible in that sense because it's the ideal or dream thing you can conceive or come up with. Furthermore, every card featured will have the same number of combo dots, so we're just going to assume everything is 4 dot for that, for the purpose of this list, but it's not a feasible solution because it's hard to get 4 dots, in all honesty. So, new criteria for offense. So basically the meta has shifted to mana funneling. So I'm going to show 2 examples. There's also videos of my other guides, but you can take a look there. But for this image here, you can see that I have lots of red dots, and I actually have the Scholar Tome on my Phoenix. So that means when I use my Phoenix, I'll actually generate enough mana to cast a special every single time. And this will allow me to instantly remove one target every turn, provided my dot actually lands and doesn't get cleansed or dispelled or misses. So this tactic of funneling mana into a key creature is powerful, and what you choose to be your mana funnel recipient will vary from your box to box, but obviously there are some creatures that are a little stronger overall. Now, removing one target at a time can be slow, can be okay at times. It depends on your team composition and what dungeon you're facing, but a more popular strategy now has been funneling mana into more AoE or area of effect oriented special abilities that can cleave and take out a row or even the entire 6 creatures on the floor 1. So those usually require 4 or 8 times combos to deal enough damage, and my team, as I've improved over time, see, I improve as well, I managed to get a 4-dot Green Giant, took out Sandworm for Thunder Giant because Thunder Giant's just better, and overall Oathkeeper is way better than VIP 8 Angels, so I found that this team is actually working much more efficiently. I have got wonderful white dot synergy. Everyone can combo, but the idea is I can use Oathkeeper and he funnels all the mana into himself, and then I can combo them up for 8 times and clear an entire row in one go. Also while healing my team for about 10,000 health or so. So this is a very efficient way to min-max your team by creating this mana funnel for someone that has AoE cleaving abilities. You do have to keep in mind that my Oathkeeper does have gold power enchant, so he's doing a lot more damage than most normally would. So your Oathkeeper may or may not be hitting as high amounts of damage, so you want to at least have that 8 times at the ready. Now, you should watch this video here. It's quite informative and also kind of shows characters that are becoming stronger and stronger over time. So, as I mentioned already, these strong AoE style characters are important, and you want AoE that can cleave down at least the whole row at once. You want them to deal, say, obviously full damage to the main target and full damage to the secondary targets, because if you don't kill the secondary targets, well, you're just a single target that does a bit of splash. Not a big deal. So you want to make sure your AoE ability can cleave and clear off more creatures as we move forward. Pure damage is less powerful unless it's incredibly high. So cards like Lich, Fire Giant. Fire Giant, I think, is still the highest single target instantaneous nuke when fully awoken because it gets 3 meteors for like 400+% power. That will wipe out anything one at a time, so that is very meaningful and powerful. But again, most creatures are not like that, and it's challenging to have that much damage with like a 0 times combo, like no combo. They just basically use them every single turn and just keep nuking down one thing at a time until everything's dead. Creatures also need to survive, so very fragile and flimsy creatures tend to get demoted, as well as those that are kind of being countered by popular floor 1 encounters. So I am in the process of working on my rare creature tier list for Dungeon Defense. This is kind of like a first draft so far. Things are going to be changing and moving around a little bit still. I have made amendments to that, but I'll make a video and posting for that later. But giving you an idea of like what are the powerful cards. And for right now, black and red tend to be the most popular creatures to populate your dungeon with. So green creatures and white creatures tend to be more vulnerable. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, mono black and mono, it's hard being green. So like I said, red creatures tend to be very strong and very powerful. Wyvern and Barbarian are basically S tier for flying and ground respectively. And they're able to basically one-shot most green creatures, and only Forest Giant can really survive a direct hit. Medusa gets knocked out fast. Druid, even with the health buff, may not even survive because she has such low defense. And you kind of get the idea, like green creatures get wiped out very quickly. So it's very hard to be green at this point in time. And that's kind of being reflected in the tier list because cards are being moved down because dungeon defenders tend to be more red. But that's also kind of giving a little shift to blue creatures being a little bit stronger because of the red heavy floor 1s. But with that being said, mono black and mono white tend to be very powerful. If you make a team of multiple white and multiple black, you tend to be quite safe because if you have, say, 3 white creatures, you're drawing fire away from each of them because it's a nuke-oriented strategy. So they're going to nuke one person down, may not kill them, they survive, the next person hits another person. So now you have 1 person at full health, 2 that are about to die, but that's okay, no one actually died. And that's important to keep in mind. So white and black tend to be the strongest to build mono-color teams with because they have they have a weakness, but they're also strong against it at the same time. So it negates a lot of the color counter mechanics of, say, like if you were a green heavy team, you're going to get demolished by red. There's no hope for you at that point in time. So here is my tier list and all the changes. So I've had Parry and Blue Drake move up to S, and Minotaur Warchief and VIP8 go up as well. Anubis debuts at A, Ice Queen goes up to A, Thunder Giant and Storm Giant are demoted. Gilfiend moves up from C to B. Jabberwock Druid and Tiamat go from A to B, and I'll explain all these changes very quickly as well. And then Sandworm Devil, Chimera, and Azura all go down from B to C. So why are these changes occurring? So Parry is kind of keeping the trend of white being the strongest color. If you look at S tier, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 creatures that are white in S tier. That's quite impressive when you think about it. And in all honesty, Thunder Cloud Giant was there beforehand as well, so you can see that white is very dominating, and that's partially because Astral's so strong and the fact that white has good synergy with themselves. Parry has a rogue damaging ability that does full damage, so the whole row gets wiped out. He has power and luck buffs, which are some of the strongest. He heals, he cleanses. He's just amazingly well-rounded overall. He's not necessarily the driving force behind your team, but it's a great card to have as well. So you want to have, like, say, another white card supporting Parry, so he can get the funnel, and then you can use Astral to resurrect if needed, that sort of idea. Ancient Blue Dragon is being promoted from A to S, and this is partially because of the fact that red is very dominant on floor 1, and Ancient Blue Dragon, while they have 3 awakenings that give bonus damage to red creatures, was kind of wasteful. It's actually becoming very valuable now because now you can funnel mana into Ancient Blue Dragon, cast a special, wipe out everything red, stun everything else, possibly even kill off one other person, who knows. But the idea is you can stun the enemy team and kill everything that's red instantly. So that's why Ancient Blue Dragon can function so well. And this is why he's been promoted upward, because you get the AoE stun. Not too many people are running yellow defenders, so this is actually a very good card to have, especially as your mana funnel target. Quiet you. Next is Minotaur Warchief. And Minotaur Warchief used to be kind of lackluster and forgotten, but amusingly enough, after I made the video of how to build a stronger offensive team, I started seeing tons and tons of Minotaur Warchiefs in PvP out of just kind of nowhere. And that's because he has a cleaving ability that is full damage, at least with a couple red stars, and you only need him to get him to level 105. The other awakenings are not so great afterwards, but at 105 he'll have enough damage at probably 4 times to instant cleave and nuke down an entire row. Very handy, a good way to funnel red dots into him and have Phoenix alongside, so you can funnel mana into Phoenix to kill bosses. Minotaur gets the funnel to kill off floor 1s. You get the idea. It's a very powerful combination overall. VIP 8 goes from B to S, kind of similar reasons why Minotaur Warchief got promoted, because even though VIP 8 doesn't technically have a cleaving ability, he is still interesting because he does massive single target nuke damage, but when they are killed, he gets a giant death blow cleave to all targets. And this is actually 200% attack, which is probably a very high scaling ability, because with more attack, you penetrate more of their defense, you end up doing more damage than, say, someone with just power. So this is quite interesting because 200% is more than enough to wipe out things at probably 4 times. No, sorry, more than enough at 8 times, maybe 4 times even. So VIP 8 is becoming a great target for your mana funnel, but the only problem with VIP 8 is black is in a very bad spot, so there's not much backup funneling cards you can use, because it's usually best to have multiple colors of your funnel, because you can funnel mana into each of them one at a time if necessary. So VIP is still very strong, but it's not necessarily the best color at this point in time unless something black and new and exciting. So Cerberus is probably the next best option, so I guess it can work out. Ice Queen goes from B to A, and Ice Queen basically has similar idea to the Ancient Blue Dragon, but much less damage, and she silences everyone instead, so still powerful. 2 turns of silence is actually kind of silly, and in theory you can funnel mana into Ice Queen and she can just keep spamming special, and people die, so that's kind of nice. 1 person at a time gets killed, a bit of cleave damage, some row stunning, mass silence, useful overall, but she's very fragile. Jabberwock and Druid go down. Again, being green is tough. You get nuked down so fast and hard. Druid, even with her health buff, I feel it's gonna just maybe put her on par with other green creatures in terms of health, but her defense stat is so low, and she has 1 awakening that's completely wasted. Her final awakening is kind of redundant, so she's losing out 1 very powerful awakening, which is kind of holding her back in my opinion. Tiamat goes from A to B. He is random target in nature. Sure, it might kill off someone, but it's the lack of consistency that's making him go down. Yes, he's amazingly terrifying against bosses, but bosses are not the threat right now. It's all about floor 1. Gilfian goes from C to B. He's got a row-based damaging ability, but the mana drain isn't very helpful. And yes, you might be able to wipe a row, but he's not doing as much as other mana funnel targets. They might give other better collateral benefits, and Gilfian is actually quite fragile as well. Sandworm, Devil, Chimera, Azure all get demoted from B to C, mostly because it's just kind of readjusting based on the current meta and how their abilities don't really fit in. Sandworm, yes, can row stun, but his damage is so low, so he may, even with combos, may not even kill anyone. So yes, you could row stun, but he's so, maybe his health will help his fragility, but again, it's just not that strong at this point in time, just because his damage is so low. So, defense. No one can fill out 5 dungeons feasibly, so we're just going to ignore all that for now. And stunning, you can't stun lock people, so it's all about the single target nuking from dungeon defenders. But bosses, they're kind of awkward. They get killed unless you enter the dungeon or enter their floor with few members remaining. So, the only things I've changed are Colossus is promoted up to S, Chimera down from A to B, Abomination, Jabberwock, Medusa from B to C, and Anubis debuts at D. Anubis is a support character, so he's not a good defender. Colossus goes from A to S. With Shrines, with Perfect and Chance, Colossus can wipe out your team in 2 specials. That's pretty important and pretty powerful, because you can also give him life self-heal on Death Blow, so he can kill someone if he gets a crit, and then heal himself back up. Pretty terrifying overall. Again, most bosses are kind of lackluster, but Colossus is definitely a force to be reckoned with. Chimera goes from A to B. He's kind of like a bad Phoenix, and it's kind of bad. So just readjusting because he doesn't get the damage mitigation unless his special goes off, but because you can't run 5 dungeons and get the stun, silence, immunity, it's going to be hard for him to actually cast that special ability. Abomination, Jabberwock, Medusa go from B to C, just readjusting because Medusa does too little damage and is too slow. Abomination's single target with a poor counterattack. Jabberwock is not going to probably kill anyone, it's just too slow as well overall. And like I said, Anubis debuts at D because it's just a support character. So in conclusion, the tier list hasn't had too many shifts. It's mostly just kind of solidifying the current meta in terms of what is strong with the mana funneling and trying to counter current wave 1s. So let me know what you think about this tier list in the comments below. What do you use on your team, and how will you plan to change your team up and re-roll your combo dots when the combo dot sets come out in the next patch? Hopefully you all have a Mantastic day. Wish you all the best of luck in your own Creature Quest adventures, and happy questing.